We all know Spider-Man. Friendly. Neighborhood. Human. But across the multiverse, that version doesn't always survive. Because across the multiverse, the same origin, the same bite, the same guilt, the same impossible responsibility produced versions of Peter Parker that barely look like Peter Parker anymore. A 1930s vigilante who executes people in alleyways. A cartoon pig protected by the rules of comedy itself. A zombie wearing Peter's face with the power to devour entire worlds. And at the top, a being so far beyond street level that multiversal gods refuse to set foot on his earth. The further you push Spider-Man, the less human he becomes. And today, we're going all the way. 7 levels, 14 variants. By the end of this, you're not going to see the friendly neighborhood version the same way again. Let's go. Level 1 isn't about raw power. It's about what happens when Spider-Man's entire world gets filtered through a completely different lens, and the identity has to survive that. Spider-Man Noir is Peter Parker, but the 1930s version. Depression-era New York, corrupt mobs, no safety net. And the origin? Not a radioactive spider in a lab. A mystical spider god, awakened from an ancient idol, chose him. That's it. No science, no accident. Pure dark mythology reaching out and picking this kid. His responsibility doesn't look like saving a bus full of kids. It looks like hunting Osborn's cannibalistic mob through rainy alleyways with a .45 revolver. He executes people. And the wild part is, it still feels like Spider-Man because the guilt is still there, the weight of it. He just operates in a world where the line between hero and killer is a lot blurrier. And then there's Spider-Ham, Peter Parker, Earth 8311. A spider who was bitten by a radioactive pig named May Porker gained human intelligence and became a cartoon animal fighting crime. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a joke. It is a joke. But here's where it gets interesting. Spider-Ham exists in a reality governed by toon logic, meaning the physical rules of his universe literally do not apply to him the way they apply to everyone else. He got flattened into a pancake by an anvil and just popped back into shape. That feat of durability would end almost any spider variant from the higher levels outright. A joke character, protected by a universe where losing isn't even allowed. So level 1 isn't weak. It's filtered. The DNA of Spider-Man, the guilt, the drive, the refusal to quit, survives both lenses completely intact. The world just rewrites what the costume means. But a costume change is just the surface. The next level asks a harder question. What happens when someone else has to carry the name? Miles Morales gets bitten by a spider that isn't just radioactive. It's been genetically modified using the Oz formula, the same experimental compound that originally created the Green Goblin. So right from the jump, Miles is running a different program. He has the full baseline kit, the strength, the agility, the wall crawling. But on top of that, he has a bioelectric venom blast and the ability to turn invisible. And these aren't just cool extras. The venom blast at full output is a feat Peter Parker cannot physically replicate. Miles once unleashed a mega venom blast that disintegrated a high-level super sentinel, gone. And the psychological layer here is brutal. Miles stepped into the Spider-Man role in a universe where Peter Parker was already dead. He didn't inherit the name. He picked it up off a grave and had to prove it deserved to survive. Scarlet Spider is a completely different kind of successor. Ben Reilly is a perfect genetic clone of Peter Parker. Same DNA, same spider sense, same reflexes, every single physical attribute identical. But he has none of the history. No photo of Uncle Ben, no memory of the first time he wore the mask. Just the instincts and none of the context. His peak moment says everything about who he is. During the Web of Carnage arc, Ben bonded with the Carnage symbiote and managed to exert actual mental control over it. That's a feat of willpower that nearly shattered the original Peter when he faced a similar situation. Both of them are defined by what they're not the original, trying to prove they belong. But Miles and Ben are still fighting for the name. The next level stopped caring about the name entirely. Level 3 is where Spider-Man stops protecting the system and starts fighting it. Miguel O'Hara isn't a lab accident. He's a geneticist from the year 2099 who worked for Alchemax, a mega corporation that essentially owns the future. When Miguel tries to quit, his boss laces his bloodstream with a highly addictive drug to keep him compliant. So Miguel's plan to fix it goes wrong, and he ends up with half his DNA rewritten using a spider's genetic code. The corporation did this to him. His origin is corporate sabotage turned biological warfare, and he's the one who has to live in it. And the kit that comes out of that is darker than anything Peter Parker is running. Miguel has paralytic claws, venomous fangs, and enhanced telepathy where a traditional spider sense used to be. He doesn't get a warning tingle. He reads a room, reads people, sees threats forming before they materialize. His peak feat is one of the most quietly significant moments in the 2099 timeline. Miguel was deemed worthy of lifting Mjolnir, which means Thor's hammer, a divine object that measures the worthiness of whoever reaches for it, looked at a geneticist from a corporate dystopia and said yes. His responsibility is literally God-sanctioned. Then there's Hobart Brown, Spider-Punk, and the contrast here is everything. Where Miguel is a scientist working from the future, Hobie is a homeless teenager from Earth 138 who got bitten by a spider irradiated by Norman Osborn's toxic waste dumping. His origin isn't an accident. It's a crime committed against him by the exact system he goes on to destroy. President Norman Osborn runs a fascist regime, and Hobie's answer is to build an army out of ordinary people, pick up a guitar, and channel 15,000 volts through an army of amplifiers to fry the internal systems of Osborn's Venom soldiers. Then he decapitates Osborn with the guitar. Then he unmasks in front of the crowd. Miguel dismantles corporate power from a century away using science and strategy. Hobie burns it down in real time using punk rock and sheer rage. Different methods, same answer. Spider-Man at this level isn't here to protect the status quo. He's here to end it. But Miguel and Hobie still have a goal, a target, a reason. The next level is what happens when Spider-Man stops having those things. Level 4 is body horror dressed up in a red and blue costume. Man-Spider isn't a separate character. It's Peter Parker's DNA regressing, the human elements getting overwritten by the spider's apex predator code until there's nothing left of the person underneath. 6 arms, acid spit, a lifting capacity that breaks 100 tons. And the spider sense that doesn't just warn him about the guy behind him, it covers 360 degrees and can detect danger from miles away, making it functionally impossible to ambush him. On paper, that's a more powerful Spider-Man. In practice, there's no moral compass attached to any of it. No quips, no hesitation. Just a predator wearing Peter's face, operating purely on instinct. And that's what makes Man-Spider so unsettling. It's not an external villain. It's not a corrupting force from outside. It's Peter Parker's own biology deciding that the human parts were the weak parts and removing them. The question that follows you out of every Man-Spider story is a genuinely uncomfortable one. If Peter is holding back in human form, if he's been pulling his punches the whole time, is Man-Spider actually what Spider-Man was always capable of becoming? Is the friendly neighborhood version just a very polite mask on something ancient and predatory? Spider-Rex takes that question and makes it prehistoric. Tarker, yes, that's his name, is a pteranodon from Earth 66 who got hit by a meteorite carrying alien spiders and ended up body-swapped into a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a T-Rex in a Spider-Man mask, running on spider-enhanced dinosaur biology. His peak feat? Surviving a point-blank explosion of an entire Oscorp tower, walking out of the rubble, and immediately going to fight a Venomosaurus Rex. No recovery time. Just consequence-free destruction at a scale that makes city block damage look small. At level 4, Spider-Man isn't a person anymore. It's a biological outcome, a predator that happens to wear the colors. The next level kept the mind and made it far more dangerous. Level 5 is what happens when you take Peter Parker's power and remove the one thing that always held it back. Peter Parker himself. Otto Octavius was dying. His body was failing. So he did the only thing a genius with no ethical flaw would do. He swapped his consciousness into Peter's body and left Peter to die in his. Then he put on the mask. And his first act as Spider-Man was realizing something that immediately changed how you see every single prior Peter Parker story. Peter had been pulling his punches for years. His very first fight as Superior Spider-Man ends with the Scorpion's jaw punched completely off. One hit. Otto isn't trying to be brutal, he's just not limiting himself the way Peter always did. He goes on to build a private army, a fortified island base, and a fleet of surveillance spider-bots across the city. He turns Peter's solo heroism into a tactical empire. And here's the genuinely maddening part. By most measurable outcomes, it worked. The city was safer, the villains were more afraid. Superior wasn't just a name he gave himself. Everything Peter refused to do, Otto proved was possible. Assassin Spider-Man is Peter Parker from Earth 8351, and he went a completely different direction. Trained under Wolverine as a Black Ops agent, he replaced every quip with military precision, every web with lethal weaponry, and his spider sense evolved into something that barely resembles the original. He can see seconds into the future. In one documented engagement, he simultaneously predicted Wolverine's next 3 moves and identified a sniper's position hundreds of feet away. At the same time, mid-combat, same gift. Zero mercy. That's level 5. The rewrite isn't in the power, it's in the conscience. Superior and Assassin chose to rewrite the rules. The next level had the rules rewritten for them by forces they couldn't control, couldn't negotiate with, and couldn't survive intact. Spirit Spider is Peter Parker from Earth 11638, and the name Ghost Spider is going to confuse you here because you probably know that name as Gwen Stacy. This is not her. This is a Peter Parker who had a near-death experience so severe that it fused him with the spirit of vengeance. Blue Flame Skull, Hellfire Webbing, the full Ghost Rider package running on a Spider-Man chassis. And the thing that makes him terrifying isn't just the aesthetics, it's what he did with it. By absorbing the life force of alternate spider variants across the multiverse, he kept growing. He didn't plateau. He fed on the web of life itself and became powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with Thanos, with Galactus. Those aren't names you put in the same sentence as a street-level vigilante from Queens. And this is where level 6 does something different from every level before it. Every prior version of Spider-Man, corrupted, rewritten, mutated, or enhanced, still had a ceiling. Spirit Spider doesn't. The corruption isn't a limitation here. It's an amplifier. He kept absorbing, kept growing, kept adding power to a frame that was already built for responsibility. That's what makes it terrifying. It's not Spider-Man weakened by something dark. It's Spider-Man made stronger by it. Then there's Zombie Spider-Man, Earth 2149. And I want to be careful here because this one goes somewhere really dark, really fast. Peter Parker gets infected by an extraterrestrial zombie virus. A hunger so complete it overrides every value he ever had. Every moral code, every line. He ate his own family, and he knew exactly what he was doing. That's the sentence that defines this version of Peter Parker. Not a villain's doing. Not a simulation. Him. And then, because the hunger doesn't stop, he consumed the Silver Surfer. And then Galactus. And when you eat Galactus, you gain the power cosmic, the ability to travel the stars, to destroy at a planetary scale, to devour worlds the way Galactus himself did. A zombie, wearing Peter's face, with the power of a world devourer, and nothing left inside that would ever choose to stop. Level 6 is what happens when something external hijacks Spider-Man's body, keeps every ounce of the power, and burns the conscience down to nothing. Spirit Spider lost his peace. Zombie Spider-Man lost everything else. Spirit Spider and Zombie Spidey are terrifying because they were once Peter Parker. Level 7 is different. At level 7, Peter Parker is still in there, and that somehow makes it more overwhelming, not less. Cosmic Spider-Man is Peter Parker from Earth 13, and he permanently bonded with the Enigma Force, the power source of Captain Universe. Not temporarily, not in a crisis moment that gets walked back by the next issue, permanently. What that gives him is near omniscience, matter manipulation at the molecular level, and a physical output that makes every prior version of Spider-Man look like a rough draft. At his peak, he punched the Hulk into orbit. He dismantled the Tri-Sentinel, a massive, nearly indestructible robot, by rearranging its molecules with a thought. Not a punch, not a web, a thought. But the feat that matters most isn't about raw power. It's about what his existence meant to everyone else. The inheritors are god-tier multiversal predators. They hunt spider totems across dimensions for sport. They have killed Peter Parker across multiple timelines without breaking a sweat. And Morlun, who has hunted Peter relentlessly across realities, refused to set foot on Earth 13. Wouldn't go near it. Not because he couldn't win, but because it wasn't worth the risk. The inheritors looked at Cosmic Spider-Man and made a calculated decision to simply leave that universe alone. When beings who hunt gods decide you're not worth the fight, that's the clearest possible measure of where you sit in the hierarchy. And then there's the ceiling above even that. Beyonder Spider-Man is a moment, brief, almost mythic, where Peter Parker held the complete power of the Beyonder. A being who doesn't live inside the multiverse. A being who exists outside it entirely. For whom the entire Marvel Universe is a small, contained thing he can observe and reshape at will. With that power, Peter defeated Galactus and Molecule Man simultaneously, not over the course of a battle, in under a nanosecond. And then he did something that stopped everything. He used the power to bring Uncle Ben back to life. The one loss that started all of this. The death that made Peter Parker Spider-Man. He could undo it. He had the power right there, and he chose not to, because he understood, at the level of someone holding reality in their hands, that some things shouldn't be rewritten, that the grief was part of it, that the responsibility came from the loss, and without the loss, none of this means anything. At level 7, Spider-Man isn't protecting a city. He's the stabilizing force, holding the web of life and destiny together. The responsibility didn't disappear. It just scaled to the size of reality itself. Same bite, same guilt, same impossible choice. Every single variant on this list started there and ended somewhere completely different. But here's the thing, and this is the part that's going to stick with you. The next time you watch Peter Parker struggling to stop a mugger in Queens, or stressing about rent while the whole city needs saving, remember what you just saw. He isn't just holding back his punches, he's holding back the monster, the god, the zombie, the corporate assassin. Every single day, Peter Parker looks at everything he could become. Everything the spider bite was always pointing toward, and he chooses to stay human anyway. That's not weakness. That's the hardest thing on this entire list. The power was never the impressive part, the restraint is. Because every version you just saw is still inside him. So tell me in the comments, which level do you think you'd actually survive? And if you want the next deep dive, it's right here.